Today we have Michelle, Dennis, Alex, and Patty with us. And we're going to hear a little bit about leadership, how they've navigated this COVID-19 pandemic, and just a little bit about them. So first, we'll start with Alex. If you could tell us a little bit about yourself. And the question we want to hear from you right now is, what role has your organization mission played in your crisis leadership and navigating the COVID-19 crisis?
Yeah, thanks, Aston, and hello, everybody. It's a real pleasure to be part of this panel and to be speaking with leaders from across COCA-I about what's been happening in the past few months. Well, Camp Ooch and Camp Trillium, we're up in Ontario, Canada, and certainly the pandemic has been a crisis for us, like all of us. What role has the organization's mission played in our crisis leadership and navigating the COVID crisis? Well, I would say that it has played a critical role. Something that I think we're learning through all of this is that is what is mission critical to our organization, and that being true to our mission is really going to be the way that we make it through the pandemic and through the economic shutdown to the other side. I think from the moment that the pandemic hit and hospitals began moving us out of doing programs in them, and it was quite obvious that we couldn't run an overnight camp, we were left with the question of, well, what is it that we can do, and how can we continue to serve meaningful programs to our families? And immediately it was that we needed to continue to serve the same way that we have been, and that was that we needed to be bringing, although we couldn't bring kids to camp, we needed to bring camp to kids. We've tested that, our virtual programs, by essentially going to our families and communicating with them, finding out from them what it is that they need from us, what is it that they expect, and then wanting to really meet that need head on. I think if I think about what our mission is, and that our mission is about meeting children right where they are, that is what we come back to every single day, whether it's looking at how we're operating, what our return to work plan will be, what our financial strategy can be through the pandemic and beyond. It absolutely is always coming back to mission. That's been a good learning for us.
Awesome. We'll go to Michelle next.
Hi. Okay, now I'm unmuted. So, hi, everybody. I'm the Senior Vice President for Camping and Related Services at Sunrise Association, and we have 8 camps throughout the country, 5 in the States and 3 in Israel, and we have in-hospital programs as well, and year-round programs. So our mission is a very broad one, not just for camp itself, but for the children with cancer and their brothers and sisters year-round in the hospitals and in day camp. And we're a full summer day camp. So what we needed to do more than anything else during COVID is first assess what the needs were for our kids and our families. And one of the things that we did is we retooled a little bit in order to be able to serve the families. And that is, we looked at what are the resources that they need, what are they going to be facing, what are the issues, financial, food, other things like that. So we retooled a little bit and created a resource network and called every single family to find out what their status was. We checked in to see how they were doing, to check in and say hi and let them know that we were here for them. We are an organization that values community and the connectedness between the staff and the families. And that was part of it, understanding how they were doing and what their needs were. The second thing was, because we could no longer go into the hospitals, we needed to retool our in-hospital programs, because we run camp-like programs in outpatient clinics and inpatient for our kids. And so we flew and turned into virtual to be able to bring virtual program and gifts and packets to the kids in the hospitals. And for our camp, we needed to think about how we could keep our community together. So when we determined that we were going to be doing full summer virtual camp, we needed to think about how we can create that in such a way as to keep the community and the connectedness together. So we kind of took it on multiple different levels with a great deal of learning, but all focused on the needs of the families and being able to give the kids and the families what they needed at this point in time and keep our organization and our community together and connected.
Thanks, Michelle. Dennis, we'll come to you next.
All right, thank you, Austin. I have a feeling there's going to be a lot of similar answers to this question as we go. You know, for Camp Tecumseh, our mission has been core to everything we do, and it will continue to be core to everything we do. COVID crisis or not, our mission is to create connection. And, you know, as everybody on this call knows, cancer creates disconnection, and our mission is to build connection for these children and their families. And whether that connection happens in person in the hospitals, in their homes, or on our grounds, it's people that create that connection. So we were really clear right up front that we weren't canceling our people or our connection building goals. That's still what we were going to do. We just needed to do it very differently. There was not an option or a choice for us to let our families down. It was very clear we needed to act. We needed to act in a collaborative yet decisive way so that we had time to plan and build what we needed to build in order to go virtual. So at Camp Tecumseh, we're a year-round program. We have programs all year long, every month. And you know, it has been a lot of work and a lot of learning to build very quickly what we're doing and how we're doing it. But we have not strayed from our mission. We're still building connection. We're just doing it very differently, a combination of virtual platforms and social media platforms, you know, wherever and however we can. So it's been very core to us. It's a key piece. And a lot of what others have already said, very much similar to what we're doing.
Patty, we're going to turn to you now. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. You're up.
Okay. I'm Patty Harris, and I'm the CEO of Camp Quality USA. We have 18 camping programs in 14 states. And again, very similarly, I would say the three prongs of our mission are relationship, hope, and child development, you know, helping kids reach their full potential. Those were the three things that we wanted to ensure were continued during this time of COVID. So one of the things that was important to us was to have something in place while we didn't know the specifics, to be able to let families know at the same time that we announced we would not be able to have our in-person programs, to be able to let them know that we would be having other types of programming and that they would be occurring at the same times that they were used to. So to try and keep that sense of, you know, at a time when kids had lost so much that they might come to rely on to keep that going, to not add to the trauma. And so similar to what everyone else has said, you know, those have been the things that we focused on in our programs that have included virtual components as well as packets delivered to the kids, is trying to maintain those relationships both between our staff and the campers, but also amongst the campers themselves, to give them hope, you know, for the future, and to provide the type of activities in the curriculum that we set out that help them develop to their full potential.
Patty, we're actually going to stay with you for this next
Okay.
question. What does leadership and motivation look like for you and your organization?
Well, I think what leadership looks like in my organization is the confidence to make decisions, the willingness to listen to all kinds of things, some of which perhaps are difficult to hear, I think that motivation is around those items that, you know, help us fulfill both our own goals in doing this kind of work and in, you know, helping our families reach their goals. So I really think that, again, what I did observe at our organization is that we made a pretty early call to cancel our summer programming. And while that was difficult and caused a lot of pain, the other thing I saw it did was it caused a level of relief in that we had made a decision and we could then focus fully on our direction forward. So I think sometimes that willingness to, you know, make those hard calls and follow through is also what, you know, leadership looks like now at this time.
We're going to ask all of our panelists to answer this question. I'm going to start with Alex. Will you describe your leadership style in a few words or less?
Sure, yeah, and maybe just picking up on what Patty was putting down. I mean, I really like what you said there, Patty, and I would piggyback on that with, you know, with organizations, and I'm going to generalize like ours, like all of ours, when we're really in the community and it's youth focused or family focused, we're helping families who are dealing with a medical crisis, and we have volunteers who are helping to drive our business forward. You know, I've seen that that leadership looks like it's coming from all areas of the organization, and it's been a nice reminder that we need to give space for that, and give space for whether it's volunteers who are throwing up their hands and saying, I want to take care of some piece of social that we can push out to families, and how can I serve that way, or it's giving the opportunities for lots of cross collaboration throughout the organization. Like I found that leadership looks like a team that is made up of all different parts of our organization in order to get the job done. And that we've had to become a much more flat organization in order for the kind of communication, the rapid fire communication that's required in a time of crisis. I mean, I'm curious if other team members on this call here have found that too. So maybe then going forward into this, you know, I would say my leadership style is probably consultative and collaborative. I would like to think it's circular and that everybody has a voice, although not everybody may have a vote. That's a few words or less.
Thanks, Alex. We'll go to Michelle now.
Alex, I agree with you in terms of the cross collaboration and that need, because we're finding the very, very same thing. But I think in terms of what's happening during this time, leadership style needs to change. I believe for me, anyhow, the leadership style needed to change. Yes, I am very collaborative, and I listen to what a lot of people have to say. And in my personal leadership style, you know, when a decision needs to be made, I need to make a decision and guide everybody in that direction, ultimately, after hearing all that information from everyone else. But what I'm learning here through COVID and dealing with leadership is there are people who are in positions in our organization that are rising to a role that was not their initial role because of their other talents and skills. And so we have been with cross collaboration, that's really critical because there are so many people who have talents and skills that we never knew of. And for this new way of working and for the working virtually, more so than in hand at camp, we needed to grab the talent wherever it was and put them in new roles and utilize their skills and their talents. So leadership at this point in time, mine for this, more than anything else, is highly collaborative and understanding, asking and listening. Those are the real critical pieces I'm finding.
Thank you, Michelle. Dennis?
So for my leadership style, I'm very much a practitioner of a process called restorative practices. And my leadership style, quite simply stated, is I attempt to lead with people. I want to lead with my staff, whether it be volunteer staff or paid staff. I tend to lead with. I find there are 4 different ways to lead. You can lead for them, you can lead to them where you're just like a dictator, or you can not lead at all. I choose to lead with as much as possible. So to try and keep it brief, I would just say I try really hard to lead with people as much as I can.
Thank you. And Patty?
Yeah, I guess I would describe my leadership style, is fairly similar to my personal style, which is very transparent, very respectful, and very responsive. I mean, those are the 3 practices that I try and stick with as a leader.
Thank you, Patty. All right, Michelle, this next question is going to be for you. What are you learning through this COVID-19 crisis?
More than anything else, I'm learning I'm not an expert. This is a time that everything is new learning. It doesn't matter how many years you've been in the camping business. It doesn't matter how many years you've been in any kind of role. Everything is new. And so I'm learning everything. I'm learning how to listen more, how to learn from other people who may not have been in a position, more than anything else. I'm constantly learning. And I'm also learning that we need to function on shifting sand. The ground is not set. There are no basic guidelines. There's no platform that we have before us that will take us to the next step. We are creating the next step every step of the way. And we don't know where the path is going to lead us. And we have to be able to reshift and retool at any point along the way, and work with our staff to allow them to feel comfortable reshifting and retooling, because this is not an issue that has a beginning, a middle, and an end. We have no idea what the middle looks like because we're really at the beginning, and we certainly don't know what the end looks like. So I'm learning that I'm learning more than anything else.
Thank you.
Yeah,
All right.
and can we build on each other's answers here? Just because why not?
Sure.
I love that, because with the learning piece, and maybe you found this too, Michelle, but like the learning that I'm doing has had to been out loud, and that I've had to communicate that learning in terms of admitting that I don't know this, and that those individuals in the organization who may not have been in front with our traditional programs, but who have a skill set or a competency to adapt rapidly. They've popped up to the front right now.
Right.
And so the team's ability to communicate again and again, and even in the early parts of this pandemic, I learned quite quickly that like increasing communication like tenfold was like not enough. Like it needed to be constant communication and broad spectrum out to our team and then out to our stakeholders. And even in 3 months in, we're learning that, wow, we really still need to double down on what we've already doubled down on, whether it's with our volunteers or our supporters and donors or families. So I agree with you on the learning.
All right. Patty, we're going to shift to you. How have past experiences prepared you for leading during a crisis?
Well, I'm probably like the senior member of this panel, so I've had a lot of past experiences, including being a manager during 9/11 and other, difficult times. I think that it's just, you learn with each situation. As Michelle said, you learn to listen more and talk less. You learn that good leadership is about being able to influence rather than tell people what they're going to do. And I think that one of the ways that that I have really tried to adapt. This kind of builds, I think, on what Michelle was saying in this particular situation is, I think everyone, realizing that everyone is going through a crisis of some type right now. Normally, you know, we're very cognizant of our families and our campers and our volunteers to some extent in terms of their needs and their burnout. But right now, there's no one, especially over the past 2 or 3 months, there's no one that has not been impacted in some way by this COVID, be it economically, be it worry about their own health, their parents' health, some other people's health. So one of the things for me that has, you know, really been critical is to take that time to ask people how they're doing, which often I don't do in my normal course of management. We're, you know, kind of getting to the point. So that's something that I think I've learned from other crises is, you know, as much as we want to be full steam ahead and dealing with the crisis and, you know, getting the fire out and so on, sometimes you have to stop and just take the temperature and see how your folks are feeling and support them and where they are, even in their personal lives with their own families, with their own concerns.
Michelle, we'll go to you. How have past experiences prepared you for leading during a crisis?
It's interesting because I've never had an experience like this, a crisis such as this, because this is a crisis that is enduring and, as Patty said, impacts everybody, and it's going to have a lasting effect all the way across the board amongst our campers, our staff, ourselves, our families. What past experiences have done is has said to me, I need to deal with whatever I need to deal with now, and keep in mind the import and the impact on the people I'm going to be working with others to make decisions for and with. That's pretty much it, because this is, I was here for Superstorm Sandy, and that had a beginning and a middle and an end, and you could move forward. And, you know, this is not anything like it. So more than anything else, it has reinforced the need to be immediately responsive and future thinking at the same time, which is not always easy, because you really need to think about what you're going to look like on the other end of this, and what you want to look like on the other end of this, what you expect the other end to look like. And you really don't know. I mean, in terms of the trajectory of COVID, you don't know what the trajectory is, and you don't know where it's going to take you. So other than being responsive and taking action and listening and being prepared to move forward, however you need to move forward to take care of the people you're taking care of, be they campers, staff, your own family. That's the best I believe you can do in this kind of experience with COVID. And that's what I've learned from the past and what I'm using for the future.
Dennis or Alex, would you like to add anything to this question?
Sure. Yes. And with the future thinking, as you mentioned, Michelle, I found that, you know, it still happens on Mondays. I'm going to be vulnerable. On Mondays, on Monday mornings, I can't get out of the cycle. I wake up and I'm like, oh, right. Oh gosh. I mean, we're in this, of course. And not that I'm in denial of it, just for whatever reason on Monday, it washes over me. And by Monday afternoon, I've kicked into where I was on the weekend and to where I was the previous week too, and where I am today too, which is that we have to look long. And that although it is totally personal and we have to be present and listening to our team members and even to what's going on inside of ourselves, that I have to know that we're going to get through this. And I was working camping too when 9/11 happened, and up here we've had tornadoes and sudden deaths of stakeholders, and what I've learned is that you know it does pass, and it can be hell while we're in it, but it does pass. And so I agree. Future thinking, I got to know that I know we're going to get through this. That's something I do know, and I got to hold that, hold that on my shoulder with me.
All right.
I'm not sure I have much more to add. They're very much the same. I mean, I had the privilege of working at a university through H1N1 with 6,000 students living on campus. So when H1N1 pandemic or mini pandemic happened, I was in it, and I was very deeply in it. The health clinic on campus reported to me. So I had a lot of experience working not with campers in that regard, but with a university setting. So I'm drawing a lot from that experience of H1N1 and applying it to what I'm doing now. You know, a big part of it for us here in Vermont is attempting to follow the guidelines that the state governor's office or the government is issuing. And when you have multiple agencies issuing guidelines that you then have to decipher into how you're going to operate, it takes a lot to do that. And I definitely have drawn on those experiences working at the university to help in that regard.
Alex, we're going to start with you with this question. What did success look like for your organization before the pandemic? During this time, how do you know that your organization is heading in the right direction?
Thanks. I think I had a different list of questions for these are all new. Anyway, that's terrific. Okay. At the end of, or the beginning of this year, Camp Ooch and Camp Trillium, which were historically two different organizations, merged on January 1st. And so at the beginning of the year, we were looking at integrating two organizations with a deep, 37-year history each of serving families and children affected by childhood cancer. And we were looking at merging them and integrating them. And our goal was to serve all families across the province of Ontario through camp, whether it was in hospital, community programs, or at overnight camp, and increasing our revenue by another $2 million so that we would be able to be in a position to grow even further beyond in 2021. During this time, how do you know that your organization is heading in the right direction? Good question. Something that we are very cognizant of is because we're looking at an integration of two organizations, and is that there's a real, culture is going to be something that's going to be a true test. Before the pandemic, we had summer camp to really integrate our cultures and to be able to bring, for example, volunteers from one program and have them come into another program and vice versa, so we could really start sharing best practices and traditions and protocols. And that just kind of got wiped away. And what was cool is that silver linings is that the pandemic hit, and suddenly we had two separate offices in two different cities that were just merged online on Zoom every day. Suddenly our office was Zoom. And so there was some barriers that were just wiped away. And we found that with virtual programs too, there's been barriers that have been just thrown out of the way. Being able to run programs and reach children that are in the hospital and connect them with kids that are at home at the exact same time. We weren't able to do that before, and lo and behold, we can now. And so when we look at, for example, the numbers of families from what were legacy camps taking part in the new virtual camp program, and we're tracking those are some of the metrics that we're looking at to understand that we're heading in the right direction. But from a cultural standpoint, we've got tactics like staff surveys, and we've got staff socials that are voluntary, and we can track how many team members are attending or participating. Those are very tactical measures of looking at success or going in the right direction. I think probably fundraising is a pretty critical piece too. I would say that the jury is still out on that. I will say though that as we've gone to major donors, where I really believe they are going to be they're really going to help us move through this pandemic. Every ask that we've made has been met. That donors are really responding to what it is that we're doing, and I think it's because it's staying on mission, and that's important to them. So I've talked a lot. I would say those are a couple of things that we're watching.
Patty, would you like to take a chance at this question or these questions?
Sure. I think it's interesting what Alex was talking about, because this wasn't part of my answer, but I'll jump on a piece of that, in that we are in the process of going through a reorganization as well. We're regionalizing and putting a layer into our organization that didn't exist before. We were kind of halfway through the hiring on that when the pandemic hit. So we had to, bring that piece to a halt while still sending the message that this is where we're going, but this may not be the right time to focus on those particulars. So I think, to Alex's point, for us, one of our big challenges this year internally and going into next year culturally is, what can we do ritually to indicate some of those changes that are happening? We have a lot of change. We're bringing in a layer between me and the executive directors at the camps. I'm retiring at the end of the year after many years with this organization. So there are lots of things happening that we will not have the opportunity to have those normal rituals and kind of rites of passage. So that's kind of one of the things that we need to think about for the future. So I just wanted to echo that, because I think that's not the obvious answer, Alex, but thanks for bringing that up. But what I will tell you in terms of the simple answer of success before the pandemic was reaching as many kids as we possibly could. And obviously providing a high quality program. That's probably pretty similar to everybody's goals. The thing that I'm finding as we go through this pandemic that tells me we're heading in the right direction, right now we're tracking at between an 18 and 20% increase in number of kids enrolled in our virtual programs over what have typically enrolled in our camp-in programs, in residential programs. So what that tells me is that, yes, we're heading in the right direction. And secondly, we need to figure out the specifics of why that's happening. I don't think it's happening because kids are so anxious to get on Zoom and have an experience. I mean, I'm just guessing that after school, that's not it. But, we expected to have some uptick in terms of kids that might be too ill to attend camp or too young to attend camp, but we never expected this type of numbers. So that's kind of, it tells me we're going in the right direction because we're reaching more kids, but it also challenges me to put real definition and understanding about why that's happening so that we can do more of that when we get back to whatever that new normal is.
Like as in that your virtual programs would continue, like it becomes a new pillar of your organization.
Yeah, we have people are talking about using virtual programming to do orientation, about doing some virtual components along with the week of camp. And like I said, I really want to understand what is attracting, where the new kids are coming from and what's attracting them and what we can offer to keep attracting them. And, will it be virtual or there's some other components? We're seeing people build a familiarity with our organization through the virtual interactions that is making them feel more comfortable about potentially sending their kids. There's always that barrier with ill children going to a sleepaway camp. So I think we have lots of, as difficult as this has been, and I certainly wouldn't have wished for this, the opportunities are amazing. If you can look at the opportunities, to learn and to grow from this, the opportunities really are tremendous.
Michelle, we'll go to you next.
Okay, so like the others said, success before were in numbers. Success was in dollars raised. Success was in terms of involvement, the number of people that were involved, volunteer involvement, a number of staff that were involved. Now, everything is changed because the amount of money that we're able to fundraise is less because everybody is impacted by this pandemic. And yet what we're finding is that the people want to be involved, that we have done something well before, really good thing before, because people, despite the lack of dollars, despite the fact that we cannot hire every staff member that we've hired before, they want to remain involved. They love us enough, they are connected enough to the community that they want to still be part of the community. And that is a statement for me of what success was like before the pandemic and what success is like now as well. And so what tells me that we're heading in the right direction is that people do want to stay involved, that we have more volunteer staff than we've ever had, that we have been transparent enough to let people know that we cannot open up our new camp that we were going to open up in Philly, because of the economics, but they know that we are going to we are maintaining a connection with that community. And they know that we've been totally transparent in terms of where we're going. So I think the success that we've had in the past in terms of the numbers and the connectedness and the fact that people want to remain with us tells me that we have been doing something right, and we're also heading in the right direction for the future. And we're taking the new learning, as Patty had said, we're taking the new learning for how to do things virtually and using it for the future, and how we may be programming in the future more virtually in hospitals, in camps. Right now we have in-camp programming in certain communities because they have the critical numbers in order to run a camp. But in those communities that don't have those critical numbers, well, we're thinking now, maybe we could do something more virtually and creating a whole virtual experience for those children in those other communities that we could not do in our more traditional hands-on in-person camp programming. So it's getting everybody thinking and everybody forward thinking. And I think that that's a very positive piece.
Dennis, let's hear from you.
Austin, I want to report robbery. Michelle stole every one of my notes for the answer of this question. Literally, it was like you were reading my notes, Michelle. That was a little overwhelming. But
I love it.
I just want to say ditto, ditto, ditto to everything. It literally was one by one by one, which is great. I think our true measure is we were doing things well before, because we really have the connection and the wanting to be engaged again, from our campers, from our volunteers, from our donors. Ditto, 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 everything Michelle said. It was just perfect because it was very much the same for us. I'm really proud of how we've stayed on mission and very strongly stayed that way. The truth is, I think in all of this, and I think as a leader, it's important to say this, we don't know. We don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. We don't know if we're heading in the right direction, but we are not leaving the table. We are being vulnerable, staying engaged, engaging our families the best way we can right now. And they're responding extremely well. So that's our only measure right now is they're in it with us and we are not leaving them. So that's the best way I can frame it.
Dennis, we're going to come back to you with this next question.
Then Michelle can't steal my answer.
We are in the service industry of helping take care of others. How are you modeling self-care for yourself, to your employees, volunteers, etc.?
Yeah, thank you for this question. When I got the questions ahead of time, I really valued this particular question. I said earlier, I use restorative practices as my leadership model, and part of that is really engaging vulnerably with your staff. And we engage very vulnerably in our staff meetings, from opening circle questions to appreciation circles to lots of different ways to talk about how this has impacted us, both as a staff and as a volunteer staff. We ran a virtual town hall with our 100+ volunteers, and I used the restorative related questions for that town hall, and really just talked about impact and the intentional outcome, but very positively happened, was people came to us afterwards and said, I didn't even know I needed that conversation until I was in the conversation. So we're providing forums to share the pain, to share the sadness, in order for people to be able to move on and get excited about what we now need to do. But if you don't take that pause to acknowledge the loss, we were worried people wouldn't move on. So we're very intentionally doing that work with our volunteers and staff. Flexible scheduling is key right now. People have to take care of families. That is deeply important. We are a family-based organization. So whether you are one of our camper families or our staff families, flexing what we do is really important. And then the last thing I'll mention is really encouraging the continued use of vacation and sick time for my paid staff, because people have stopped using it. And it's like, no, still take your vacation, still take time away. And a mental health day is a sick day. You can take a day off just to stay off screens, and that's important for you to do. And I'm trying really hard to do that myself as much as possible, and role modeling it with my staff as much as I can and our families.
Would any of the other panelists like to add to this question?
I'd like to be perfectly honest with this question. I can tell you that I am not doing very well on self-care. And I know that a lot of my staff are not doing very well on self-care, because the motivation and the drive and the desire to do as much as they can and have as much learning under their belt to be able to create excellence has been something that has been a driving force working against self-care. In our organization, however, we have staff that are putting together newsletters twice a week to teach us, about mindfulness and meditation and all that other sort of stuff. But I can tell you, though, I will encourage my staff to take care of themselves, to take time off, to breathe, and to not work a 12 to 16-hour day. It's very hard because I know that they're not going to accept that. I know that they're not going to do that. And I can tell you very honestly that I am not doing that myself. And that is, as much as I may say what I'd want and say what I want other people to do, I'm finding the driving force and the need to accomplish and learn so much right now is so intense that it's very hard to sit back and breathe. I encourage however I can encourage, but I respect and understand that a lot of my staff are doing the same thing that I am. And that's just what is.
And I would say the same thing that, I have that same issue. And, one of the challenges here is the fact that we've had to pivot so quickly and learn so much in such a short time. And that's true of all of our volunteers as well. We are primarily a volunteer organization. And so it's really been asking a lot to not only, go through that grieving process of not having the residential camp that everyone is used to as their touch point, but everyone having to learn so much new stuff. So I think part of it is trying to understand and meet people where they are and understand that everybody has a different way of dealing with this. And what I've observed is some people, are almost immobilized, and we got to say that's okay. And some people are, maybe working overtime. I've probably worked more hours in the past 3 months than I have at a run in a long period of time. And we just need to say that's okay too, but, remind them to take some time. That's why I'm at Chautauqua, Michelle. I'm doing a little self-care here.
Good for you.
I still have to plug in a meeting, but but I think that is a tough thing. We've done, some seminars and things for our folks, but I do think that that's one of the real challenges, in a time like this, is for leaders to actually model the self-care rather than just talk about it or
Right.
teach it.
Michelle and Patty, to your point, there's two parts of knowledge. One is acquisition and the other is practice. So yeah. Alex, would you like to add anything to this question?
I don't think so. I think the panel said it very well.
Awesome. All right. I am going to stop sharing my screen because this question is going to be for all the panelists. This will be our last question for the evening. What advice do you have for leaders, for COCA members right now? And we'll start with Alex.
Well, I think, the fact that even, the team that is gathered on this call tonight, it sounds like they're doing it, but something that's been invaluable for me has been connecting with peers and carving out time or 15 minutes and saying, hey, let's grab 15 minutes, want to bounce something off you or talk to you, and or vice versa. And it's been invaluable. And it's something that I've found pre-pandemic, I have to be intentional and I have to be deliberate about it. And that maybe initially it was very easy for me to wipe that off as a priority in the pandemic. However, I come back to it that weekly. I'm not only to be able to have, to be able to soundboard ideas but also just from the fellowship that I experienced there has been invaluable to helping me keep my head above water and in a forward-facing position.
Dennis, we'll go to you next.
I always forget to do that. Thank you, Alec, Austin. I think the greatest advice that I could give is find gratitude in everything you're doing. COVID may have presented challenges, but there's always silver linings, and there's always ways that we can do what we do better. We, as leaders, we need to lead and not wait. We need to do the work with our staffs as much as possible, find lots of gratitude for ourselves and for our staffs for the work that they are doing, the insurmountable learning that's happening right now. And honestly, allow yourself to be vulnerable and make mistakes. I think pre-COVID, we were in a place where things had to be 95% fully baked before we launched because we couldn't make a mistake. And now I'm like, we're 40% of the way there, let's go. And if we make a mistake, we're gonna own it, we're gonna apologize, but we're not gonna dwell on it. And we're gonna keep moving forward, because for some of our kids, this summer's program is their only program. It's the only one they're gonna see. And so we don't have time to waste. We still have to move and make the magic happen and do it in a way that's deeply meaningful for them. And we will find our meaning along the way. So lots and lots of gratitude. Lead through your gratitude, and it won't let you down.
Patty, we'll come to you next.
Yeah, I would say two things. One, which is kind of what Dennis was saying, for a leader, I think really focus on the opportunity, focus on what the positives, and help the folk that really, modeling that for your people, I think is very helpful. And the other thing I would say is just to, the more you can specifically recognize the creativity and what your folks are bringing to the table during a time like this is really helpful. I mean, I have the opportunity to see more of that virtually than perhaps I saw, just because of the scope of our operation compared to where I sit. And it's really been awesome to be refreshed and reminded of the tremendous level of talent and commitment that people in my organization and in each of your organizations have. So I would say take some time to kind of revel in that and appreciate that, and let your folks know how much you appreciate what they're bringing.
Thank you, Patty. Michelle?
It's interesting, you use the term leader. And one of the things that I'm learning through this is that we are less leaders and more guides, and people who can work together with a team, with those who are learning beside us and with us. And I think that that's the most critical thing for a current leader, someone in a leadership position right now, to be aware of in working with their staff and with their volunteers. And Dennis, yeah, you took some of my stuff too, but hey, that's okay. I think we need to be forgiving of ourselves and what we're doing, because it's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be 1,000% as we're moving forward, because we are learning, we are newbies, we are brand new at this. And we will get better. And as long as we keep our mind set on what we want to excel in and how we want to excel, and are willing to constantly tweak and change, then we will be great leaders with wonderful organizations working with us together to provide the most and the best possible opportunities for our kids and our families.